Welcome back to It Is Also Written Ministry, part 4 of To Whom Is God Speaking? Taking a look at the church today, many are calling upon revival and reformation, and it really is taken on a form of itself, dependent upon which leadership you're following and how that unfolds. But today, there is a paradox we're going to take a look at as to how this reformation and revival in the last days is going to take place, and what's holding it up. And so what seems to be on everybody's mind is the second coming of Christ, and when is it going to occur? Well, the saying is, you can't save the world until you save the church. So I think you'll see after today's message is that, number one, the church has to be separated, the wheat and the tares. Number two, the church has to be purified. And once that takes place, then you'll have a fortified, triumphant church that'll go out, and then the gospel will go to every single tongue, nation, and people in the world. So we see up to this point of reformation and revival, only then and then only when Christ will come through the clouds of glory is when he has purified his church and he has a church triumphant. Now looking at Zechariah chapter 6, 1 through 8. And I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came forth chariots out from between two mountains, and the mountains were mountains of brass. In the first chariot were red horses, and in the second chariot black horses, and in the third chariot white horses, and in the fourth chariot grizzled and bay horses. Then I answered and said unto the angel that talked with me, What are these, my Lord? And the angel answered and said unto me, These are the four spirits of the heavens, which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. The black horses which are therein go forth into the north country, and the white horse goeth forth after them. And the grizzle go forth toward the south country, and the bay went forth and sought to go, that they might walk to and fro throughout the earth. And he said, Get you hence, and walk to and fro through the earth. So they walked to and fro through the earth. Then cried he upon me, and spake unto me, saying, Behold, these that go toward the north country have quieted my spirit in the north country. Now, as you'll see in this paradox, in this prophetic symbolism is the fourth chariot. It is hitched to two teams, the grizzle and the bay. One team trying to make it in one direction, that's south, and the other team in another direction, to and fro throughout the whole earth. Now, what is to become of the chariot, and which of the teams is likely to take it? That is the paradox, for they cannot both have it unless they walk together, that is, seeing eye to eye. As this is a paradoxical symbolism, it has been a mystery ever since the prophet wrote it, and as it is now disclosed to you perhaps for the very first time, inspiration obviously is for warning someone of something very serious that is taking place at this particular time. What can it be? Well, the prophet Zechariah was as anxious to know as we are, for he asked, What are these, my Lord? And to his question came the answer, These are the four spirits of heaven which go forth from standing before the Lord of the whole earth. So the angel answer is positive. The chariots, he declared, are the spirits of the heavens who stand before the Lord and who are sent to go to and fro throughout the whole earth. Plainly then, these four teams and chariots symbolize four messages, four spirits sent from God's presence. And since all the messages are from God, are carried to and fro throughout the whole earth by the ministry and the church, the chariots and their teams, therefore, are seen to symbolize the church at work in four different periods of time. So the next question probably we should ask is, where in the stream of time shall we look for this message-laden and trouble-burdened church, this paradox? In our time, in the past, or what? Well, the brass mountains give the clue, for the chariots came from between them. We should therefore first find out what the mountains symbolize and where they stand in time. As the chariots came from between the mountains, one standing to their left, that is the mountain on the left side, is futuristic, it's in the future, and the other to the right in the past. It is necessary to locate them first. The biblical interpretation of a symbolical mountain is as follows in the Bible. In Zechariah chapter 8, verse 3, it says, Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. The mountain in Zechariah's prophecy, therefore, as elsewhere in the Bible, are seen to symbolize two governments, churches, very similar in nature, both of brass, and at two different times, one to the chariot's right and one to their left. Being of brass, a metal that has everlasting qualities that does not deteriorate, shows that they represent something eternal. Moreover, the mountains being of the same symbolical material as that which the feet of Christ in Revelation 1:15 were shown to be brass, it locates the mountains in the Christian era. The only such holy government of God in the Christian era, one in the past and one in the future, between which the path of the chariot lies, are the church of the Pentecost with the 120 spirit-filled disciples symbolized by the mountain to the chariot's right, and the church at the second Pentecost, that would be Joel 2:28 and 29, yet future, with the 144,000 spirit-filled disciples standing on Mount Zion with the Lamb, Revelation 14:1, symbolized by the mountain to the chariot's left. It is well understood that the church of today is made up of all kinds of materials, not only of solid brass, not of true Christians only, but commingled with the good and the bad, wheat and the tares. The truth is therefore obvious. There is to be another such sin-destroying and sin-sifting theocracy as the one in the day of Ananias and Sapphira, who, for the sinning, gave up the ghost as they fell at the apostles' feet. Acts chapter 5, 1 through 11. Plainly, the chariots symbolize the church militant at work between the second Pentecost versus the church triumphant. So this church between the two mountains is militant. In other words, it is commingled with the truth and with error. Thus, it is not the church triumphant. The fourth chariot being the last, it is to be found operating just before the second Pentecost. Since the chariots are led by horses, the horses themselves must symbolize the chariot's church leadership, and the passengers in the chariot must symbolize the laity. The symbolism, though, is to disclose the paradoxical situation that exists with the fourth chariot, that is the last, and hence the Laodicean church with the judgment message as her name itself indicates. The first chariot, you remember, is led by red horses, the second by black horses, and the third by white, and the fourth noted by two kinds, grizzle and bay horses. The color of each horse being a mark of species, it must be indicative of their natural and consequential circumstances. And as afore noted, they are symbolical of the ministry in each segment of church history. The red eventually signifies martyrdom. The black signifies captivity. The white signifies freedom. The grizzled and the indefinite color, neither black nor white, symbolizes ministers that are neither true Christians nor true Gentiles. In other words, hypocrites. Now, as far as the bay, it denotes strength, the victorious church, the church triumphant. This symbolical prophecy is seen to corroborate history. It points out that the Christian church at first suffered martyrdom, shown by the color red, then followed by the dark ages of religion when the church was in captivity, black. Following these came the Protestant period, the period of religious freedom, the white team. And at last comes the fourth chariot with its bay and grizzled teams. The teams are seen to have a controversial struggle over the chariot. Grizzled being an indefinite color, neither black nor white, denotes hypocrisy, the kind of which is heretofore unknown, whereas the color bay denotes spiritual strength, the kind heretofore unknown. Since the church originated in Asia, Jerusalem in particular, the first chariot is seen to have remained there, for it went nowhere. The north country, geographically north of Palestine, is where the other chariot went, that is, the countries which the Christian nations are now inhabiting. The fourth chariot, though, is supposed to go to and fro throughout the whole earth, to every nation and kindred, tongue and people. But contrary to this, the grizzled horses go forth toward the south country, which figuratively speaking would be spiritual Egypt or worldliness. God's Spirit, having been silenced in the north country, must denote that the message of God in the north country were generally rejected, especially the one of the fourth chariot, which caused the Spirit of truth to turn away and to bring truth no more through them, to be silent there, and that, therefore, there is not to be expected any truth through them. The double team of horses and their two kinds of colors pulling in two different directions are immediately seen to symbolize a double set of church leaders, the Seventh-day Adventist leaders, and those that are preaching the fourth angel's message, or the Jacobites. Unlike in character and aim, symbolically speaking, the grizzled horses, those that appear first on the prophetic scene, are leading the chariot into Egypt, the worldliness from which they ought to come out of rather than to go back into. The bay horses, though, are endeavoring to pull away from it and go to and fro throughout the whole earth as commanded, to finish, in other words, the gospel work in accordance with God's plan. But this cannot take place so long as both teams are hitched to the chariot, for the chariot cannot possibly move in either direction while one team pulls in one direction and the other in another direction. The immediate necessity, therefore, is to unhitch or discharge the one so that the other can be free to go to and fro through the earth as soon as they are told to go. And when this happens, the paradox will be a paradox no longer. So what put two different kinds of leaders working at cross purposes? Well, I'm going to go ahead and let the spirit of prophecy give the answer. Here follows the description of one set of church leaders. Those who have rendered supreme homage to science falsely, so-called, will not be leaders then. Those who have trusted in intellect, genius, or talent will not then stand at the head of rank and file. They did not keep pace with the light. Those who have proved themselves unfaithful will not then be entrusted with the flock. So obviously, these self-important leaders who love to slumber in a lukewarm country are represented by the grizzled horses. Now let's read of the leaders whom the bay horses depict, the ones that come on the scene last. The Lord has faithful servants who in the shaking, the testing time, will be disclosed to view. There are precious ones now hidden who have not bowed their knee to Baal. They have not had the light which has been shining in a concentrated blaze upon them, but it may be under a rough and uninviting exterior, the pure brightness of a genuine Christian character will be revealed. In the daytime we look toward the heavens, but we do not see the stars. They are there nonetheless, fixed in the firmament, but the eye cannot distinguish them. In the night we behold their genuine luster. This is exactly what is happening right now. Those who are rejecting the message that is announcing the judgment of the living, those who did not keep pace with the light and are satisfied to stay in the antitypical Egypt, the Seventh-day Adventist ministry, are to be discharged, in other words, unhitched. And the hidden ones, those represented by the bay horses, the fourth angel, the Jacobites, that ministry, are coming to the front. They are now being disclosed to view and are getting ready to take the chariot. Then, as soon as they are told, go, they will unhesitantly and speedily move on to and fro through the earth with the message of the hour, the judgment for the living. Now, let the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination concretely explain what and where the South Country is. I'm filled with sadness when I think of our condition as a people. The church has turned back from following Christ, her leader, and is steadily retreating toward Egypt. Yet few are alarmed or astonished at their want of spiritual power. Doubt and even disbelief of the testimonies of the Spirit of God is limiting our churches everywhere. Satan would have it thus. Ministers who preach self instead of Christ would have it thus. The testimonies are unread and unappreciated. God has spoken to you. Light has been shining from His Word and from the testimonies, and both have been slighted and disregarded. The result is apparent in the lack of purity and devotion and earnest faith among us. So the $100 question is, what will unhitch the grizzled horses from the chariot? There are many ministers today advocating that it is okay to leave the church. Well, this is not the case. We should not be looking to unhitch ourselves from the church. This is the work of God. This is the work of the Spirit of God. It is only the work of God that can unhitch the grizzled horse from the chariot, not man. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. And I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations, to Tarshish, Pul, and Lud, that draw the bow, to Tabal and Javan, and to the isles afar off. that have not heard of my fame, neither have they seen my glory. And they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles, and they shall bring all of your brethren for an offering unto the Lord out of all nations, upon horses, and in chariots, and in litters, and upon mules, and upon swift beasts, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, saith the Lord, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of the Lord. Now here is projected a slaughter, a purification, a separation, taking place among those who have been instructed to abstain from unclean meats, but among whom many are violating God's command, the disobedient, those whose bellies are their gods, including those who sanctify and purify themselves, that is the self-righteous, in the gardens behind one tree, that is behind their truth-hating minister, are by the Lord himself removed from among his truth-seeking ones. So after the transgressors are thus removed, then those who are left that escape, the remnant, become the servants of God and are sent to all the nations, especially to those who have not yet heard either of God's fame or the good news of his kingdom. These escaped ones are to bring to the house of the Lord their brethren, all that will be converted to Christ. And this is called a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindred and people and tongues. They shall stand before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. Thus will be the gospel be finished by those who escape from the Lord's slain, Isaiah 66:15 and 16, and God's people be quickly gathered from the four corners of the earth, happily brought as an offering to the house of the Lord, Isaiah 66:19 and 20. Now is everyone's chance to decide to be either on the one side or on the other, either to reform and to be led by the faithful bay horse, or to cling to the self-important grizzle horses and stay by them in the south country, there to perish. Here is indeed the momentous decision to be made by every member of the denomination. It calls for action that will decide the future destiny of the laity as well as of the ministry. Now is your opportunity to act. It is my wish and prayer that you and every member of the denomination chooses to be on the side which this unveiled paradox of the ages plainly and definitely instructs you to be on. Do not let the grizzled horses deceive you any longer. Meet their fair speeches with "Thus saith the Lord." You take them to the task on this strictly biblical truth. The promise to purify Jerusalem, Judah, and Israel stands as sure as any promise in the Word. The terms Jerusalem, Judah, and Israel, cannot be applied to anything but to the church, the place where everyone should be sighing and crying against the abominations. Those who do not sigh and cry are to be left without the mark. And then the angels who have charge of the church, notice the angels, not man. The angels will smite every one of them, old and young. Stay tuned to part 5 of To Whom is God Speaking? God bless you.